Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Just a remarkable amount of news out there. Donald Trump's, the attorney, his Surgeon General, is in favor of gun control. Well, he's got to go, so boom, out he goes. He gives a Purple Heart to a veteran and says, congratulations. You know, it really should be something other than that, you know. He's telling NBC that he got them their highest ratings since 9/11. I mean, it's just very, very strange. But the main story, I think, was the climate march here over the weekend, not just here in Washington, D.C., but literally, or not the science march, March for Science. Climate, obviously, a subset of that, or I would say probably the major subtext of it. And the message all across the country was, you know, let's pay attention to scientists, and the scientists who are, you know, the most being dissed, of course, are those who are involved in climate science. I mentioned Michael Mann in my article on Alternet. Michael Mann is suing for libel because of the way he was trashed by these anti-science, you know, pro-fossil fuel groups. It's incredible. Meanwhile, Think Progress is reporting Kelsey Warren, the CEO of Energy Transfer Partners, has had a long career in the fossil fuel business. This article by Kylie Crow. And Donald Trump is now president, and Warren's nomination to the Texas Parks and Wildlife Commission is on its way to approval. Right. So yeah, let's put a fossil fuel billionaire or a fossil fuel person in charge of you know, Texas's. This is just nuts. It's just nuts. And anyhow, there were a number of other things here too that I wanted to share with you. There's a six-figure ad buy that has been launched opposing the repeal of prepaid card protections. Now this, because it's got, you know, opposing the repeal, it's kind of a double negative. So basically, here's what's going on. Used to be that if you were on welfare, or if you had certain types of low-paying jobs, your employers would pay you with a debit card rather than a check. The credit card companies make this free to employers and to the government, and in some cases even pay them, because whenever you use a debit card, they can charge the vendor that you're using, but they can also charge you, the debit card holder. So they were starting to charge all these outrageous fees and gotchas, and people were getting screwed. They were charging every time you just check your balance. Oh, gee, that's another charge to find out what your balance is, so you don't, you know, run over your balance. And so, you know, a rule was passed a law was passed, or actually the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau put together a rule. It's called the Prepaid Rule, that said you can't do this to people anymore. If you give them a prepaid credit card, they got the prepaid credit card. You can't rip them off. And Georgia Senator David Perdue has introduced legislation into the United States Senate to repeal that rule. And Allied Progress, a progressive group, has now rolled out a television ad that's running starting today in D.C., Alaska, Maine, and Nevada, encouraging those senators. They think that those senators in those states, those are, you know, D.C., of course, it's all the senators. Alaska, Maine, and Nevada, Republican senators, to reject Senator David Perdue's attempt to repeal the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau's prepaid rule. And here's where it gets amazing. Last week, this is from Mike Zinn, the vice president of the PR firm that sent this information out. He said, last week, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution highlighted how repealing the prepaid card rule benefits a major Purdue donor to the tune of $80 million. So here you have Senator David Perdue from Georgia By the way, if you'd like to call him and share your thoughts on this with him, the number for Congress's switchboard is 202-225-3121, 202-225-3121. Senator David Perdue has a major donor who stands to make $80 million if he can start ripping off prepaid card holders. But right now, the law prevents that. And so Perdue is introducing legislation to say, no, we're going to let this guy make his $80 million bucks. The television ads are called House of Cards. They're calling on Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, and Dean Heller to oppose the legislation. And one of the things that's not in here is how much money. Oh, here it is. Net spends, PACs, and executives have given Senator Perdue more than $33,000 in campaign contributions. The company has a troubling record of predatory practices. Just one day after Perdue filed his legislation to benefit NetSpend, the company agreed to refund customers $53 million to settle an FTC charge that it had, quote, deceived consumers about access to funds deposited on defendants' debit cards. So this is a company, we're talking millions of dollars. This is sort of like the, sell your privacy thing. We discovered that all these Republicans who voted to let ISPs sell everything you do, from your emails to your credit card numbers to your Social Security numbers to anything you do on the internet, to sell that to whomever they want, that in some cases the cost of their vote was $5,000 or $10,000. Most of them were 30, 40, 50. A couple got a couple, six figures. But here you've got David Perdue has taken $33,000 from this company, and he's introducing legislation that's going to make them $80 million. Now, people come to Washington, D.C., and they drive around and they go, holy cow, especially if they were here 30 years ago, before, 40 years ago, before Reagan, when D.C. was just kind of a sleepy little town that was not particularly prosperous. It was the capital city, and it was a great tourist destination, but, there was a lot of poverty in D.C. Now there's just this explosion of construction and gentrification. D.C., in fact, has gone from being a majority black city to 50-50. And, white people moving in being part a sign of that gentrification. And there's a simple reason why. And that is that in 1976, the Supreme Court in the Buckley versus Vallejo decision ruled that it was legal for billionaires to buy politicians. And then a couple years later in the Boston versus Bellotti case, the Supreme Court ruled that it was legal for corporations to buy politicians. And then in 2010, of course, Citizens United pulled all that stuff together and doubled the legality of it, widened it even more. And then in 2012, with the McCutcheon decision, they struck down the limits on how many politicians an individual billionaire could own. So we have a situation now here in Washington, D.C., where you've got this company, NetSpend, with a $33,000 gift to Senator David Perdue of Georgia. $33,000 gift. They're going to get an $80 million profit. Now, what company in their right mind would not look at that math and go, holy cow, I've got to do that? The best investment you can make in America right now, if you are a big enough corporation, is to buy a politician. Best investment. And have that politician write your legislation for you, as David Perdue has apparently done for NetSpend, at least according to this group Allied Progress. The script for the TV commercial goes, millions of Americans receive everything from hourly wages to Social Security payments on prepaid debit cards. Companies nickel and dime them with hidden fees. And prepaid cards lack federal protection from fraud and mistakes. But new regulations could finally end prepaid card gotchas unless the card companies get their way in Congress. Call Senator Murkowski, Collins, Heller, and tell him/her to keep prepaid debit card protections in place to safeguard Americans from being played. And this is fascinating. The Allied Progress is the group, and I'm guessing that their website is alliedprogress.org. But oddly enough, in their press release, as far as I can tell, they didn't include their website, which is a mistake, I'd say. But anyhow, this is what's going on. This is, you know, if you want to make money in this town, buy a politician. I mean, as a corporation, you want to make money in this town. And if you're a politician in this town, do like Tom Price was doing, the guy who's now in charge of your Medicare, right, and of Obamacare. Tom Price, former doctor, was in Congress, and he was gambling on the stock prices of medical device companies and drug companies that he was writing legislation and voting on legislation about.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
I mean, the Republicans have really got this scam down, and they are getting rich. The members of Congress are getting rich. Look at Darrell Issa. He's nearly $1 billion. They're getting rich, and they're making their patrons.